loved ones. Today we're going to talk about trauma trigger basics. Help us get these messages out. Please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and please share these messages with others. You never know, you can save a life. Christy Oshoni, psychotherapist at My Therapy, New York City, offers individual and couples counseling in New York City. She specializes in depression, anxiety, trauma, relationships and dating, life transitions, and self-esteem. And she has this information on trauma triggers. So let's see what she's got for us. Question is, what is a trauma trigger? Trauma triggers are a well-researched phenomenon. However, the word triggered can make people uncomfortable. For some to say that a person is triggered is a shorthand way of saying that they are weak, dramatic, and far too sensitive. This common misuse can have devastating impacts for those suffering from post-traumatic stress and trauma-related disorders. For this reason, it is essential to develop an informed understanding of this term that has such important implications for those recovering from trauma. So what is a trigger? First, let's dispel any notion that a trigger is inherently negative. It isn't. A trigger simply refers to something that activates a response within the body. Triggers are usually sensory in nature, meaning that they can be comprised of various sights, sounds, sensations, textures, and even scents. In many cases, triggers act as a signal to the body that a threat is nearby. Because we encounter similar types of danger throughout our lifetimes, our brains are adept at making associations between related forms of threat. It is an effective system that all humans have for survival. For example, imagine a child pulling a cat's tail and receiving a scratch on the arm in return. This can certainly be a distressing event for a child, and we can safely assume a few things. For one, in the future, the sight of the cat will likely trigger caution. Whether the child is aware of it or not, they have made an association between the presence of the cat, particularly the cat's tail, and the potential for danger. When they have an opportunity to pet the same cat later, or maybe even another, they may even experience slight physical tension as they approach the tail, an unconscious reminder to exercise restraint. Not only that, but the child may also generalize this information. As a result, they will very likely avoid pulling the tails of different cats and even other similar animals such as dogs. To avoid future pain, it is vital that the child's brain is able to construct these types of connections. And it is also essential that the child is able to respond automatically, rather than wasting valuable time thinking, remember what happened with the cat, each time they encounter an animal with a tail. We need our bodies to react without conscious thought so that we can quickly avoid or engage with a threat. Triggers, the sensory information we associate with dangers, serve as reminders to our nervous system of what has previously been encoded for threatening. So what does it mean when someone is triggered? The problem with our ability to instinctively generalize information about threats is that it can sometimes make it difficult to assess for safety. And this becomes especially challenging for individuals who have a history of trauma. In trauma, the threat system that is used for survival can become disorganized. This is usually a result of how emotional information is processed at the time of the traumatic events. In the midst of high distress, we typically enter a few selective states ranging from mobilizing responses like fight and flight to immobilizing responses such as freeze or faint. In mobilization, we may experience these following things: the rapid heart rate, faster breathing, feeling panicked, blood flow directed to the heart and muscles, and skin temperature decreasing. Some examples of immobilization may include numbness, tingling in the extremities, blood pressure dropping, difficulty speaking, and feeling faint. For individuals who experience singular traumatic events or repeated traumatic episodes, these responses can become conditioned in the nervous system. This means that even in moments of objective safety, the body can still respond to a trigger as though it is in danger. For example, Someone who has been in a car accident may experience feelings of panic and a sudden increase in heart rate anytime they get into a vehicle. Other triggers, however, may be less apparent, since disassociation, which is disconnection in one's thoughts, feelings, and or memories, is a common automatic response in trauma. An individual may not even be aware that their brain has encoded something as triggering. For example, some survivors of sexual assault may not have specific memories of the assault, but they may feel overwhelmingly alarmed or numb while watching scenes in films that feature sexual abuse. So it's important to be compassionate in your understanding of trauma triggers. So how do we do this? It may be hard to understand that someone might have such a strong physical reaction despite being technically safe. For this reason, it is important to remember that your experience is not universal. What may be triggering to someone else, given their history, might be completely neutral to you. But that doesn't mean that they are dramatic or that they are being simply overactive. In fact, these types of labels can often make it harder for trauma survivors to seek help and support. Imagine how terrifying it would be to enter vacillating states of panic and numbness without even really knowing why. And on top of that, imagine how painful it would be to have others around you calling your integrity into question. The concept of being triggered is real and researched, and it is important to treat it as such. Even if you do not identify as having a trauma history, it is likely you still have some sense of what it means to be triggered. We all have moments in which we may locally recognize we are not in danger and yet we still feel worried or helpless. It's part of being human. If you struggle to understand what someone is going through when they describe being triggered, try to think about the times in your life in which you have felt terrified and out of control. Finally, if you can identify triggers related to your own trauma, and if you're struggling to cope with them, start by offering yourself compassion. Practice saying, "It's not my fault," when your body reacts in ways you don't understand. Recognize all of the ways you have been resilient through adversity. And lastly, know that there is help. There are therapies and treatments designed with your needs in mind, and your body is wise enough to learn new strategies to take care of you. Being triggered is not the end of the story. The question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. And those who suffer violence need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will reach out to them and give them the help they need before it's too late. Please help us get these messages out. Hit the like button, notification bell, share with others. And if you're a victim of violence, listen to me. You are valued, you are loved, you're intelligent, you are worthy. God doesn't want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It's not your fault. Abuse is not love, and you are not alone. If you're a victim of violence, reach out to someone today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help. And if you know of someone suffering violence, tell the authorities. In our next episode, we will begin our last few episodes on trauma by revisiting the types of trauma. Until then, God bless you.